So although we may get angry, and anger is quite widespread in society these days, His Holiness tells us that actually kindness is what is innate or always happening for us sentient beings from the time we were born until the present. That our first experience coming into the world after being born is one of kindness. People taking care of us, feeding us, clothing us, protecting us. And all the time while we grew up, now, during our education, all the time, we're receiving kindness from other living beings. So we tend to take that kindness for granted, and then when there's some upset in society, we really emphasize that. So why we shouldn't ignore anger and violence. It's important to not have a skewed view and to look around us every day and see how much people who are complete strangers to each other do things to help each other. And to see sentient beings who sometimes get jealous or angry or complain a lot or whatever. To see, yes, and they also have extended great kindness to us. So keep balancing our view of other living beings, not letting it get extreme. And then seeing that kindness, then letting arise the wish to repay it. And let that wish come naturally. So when we receive kindness, yeah, we're happy, we're grateful. Let's show that. So based on that, then we can abandon negativity, practice virtue, generate the realizations of the path, and become Buddhas ourselves. But we have to have a basis in our life of really experiencing kindness and giving kindness and appreciation for other living beings. If we don't have that, our life's going to be totally miserable. So this is an attitude that we need to create within ourselves through seeing things in a realistic way and abandoning the skewed view of poor me. So let's have a strong determination to do that and to show that in the world and thereby to benefit sentient beings all the way from now until full awakening. True or not true? It's true, isn't it? For being intelligent people, it sometimes takes us a long time to realize something that is quite obvious. If we turn our mind to it, we see it's quite obvious. It doesn't take great intelligence to understand. But we actually, ignore the obvious sometimes. Okay, so we're on page 151, and I stopped right before the reflection. So the previous section talked a lot about motivation and the 3 Dharma motivations of seeking a good rebirth, seeking liberation, and seeking Buddhahood. Okay, so the reflection, this is what you should practice, okay? So if you don't know what to do in your Lamrim meditation, do this. So reflect, our motivation is the principal factor determining the value of our actions, not how we look to other people, not if we impress other people, but what's going on inside of us. 2, for an action to be Dharma, the motivation must be more than seeking our own immediate happiness of this life. Okay, so nothing wrong with our own immediate happiness of this life, but it's very limited. Yeah, and having the motivation only for that leaves us with limited, quite a small creation of merit. Yeah. 3, we are not bad for seeking the happiness of this life, but if we seek only this, we often create the causes for misery now and in the future. Okay, so we can see that, when we're just involved with what's happening in this life, we're craving this, we want this, then we try and figure out how to manipulate to other people to get it, and we lie or we misrepresent things or whatever. And then when our happiness is interrupted, we get angry. When other people have better situations, we get jealous. When we have a better situation, we get arrogant, stick our nose in the air. It creates a bunch of problems now, and we do a lot of negative actions that create the cause of suffering. Okay, so it's not that we're bad people. It's not that the happiness of this life is bad. But it's just a thing to be aware of the results of our actions, It's like there's nothing bad about chili pepper, okay? But if you plant chili pepper, you should be aware that you planted chili pepper and that's what you're going to be eating, yeah? And if your mouth burns and you become a dragon with chili pepper like I do, and can't speak afterwards, then you want to stay away from planting chili pepper because of what happens to you. Okay, so it's not bad, but if you think about the result, you don't like the result. Okay? And then point 4 is expanding our hearts to care for others and training our minds in long-term motivations, such as seeking fortunate rebirth, liberation, and full awakening, bring a sense of inner fulfillment. Okay, so why do those long-term motivations bring a sense of inner fulfillment? Well, whereas motivations seeking only the happiness of this life don't leave us feeling fulfilled, but leave us feeling, restless and dissatisfied. Yeah. So this is something very interesting to look at in our own lives, Why does just seeking my happiness now make us feel restless and dissatisfied? Yeah, I don't know about for you, but when my mind's that way, my mind's restless because I can never get everything I want. Yeah, my mind always wants more and better, more and better, more and better. And even I get some of what I want, it doesn't last very long. Okay? It's like, how long can your mint chocolate chip ice cream last? Yeah, not very, because it's going to melt, and then you eat it, and, finito. Okay? And then it just leaves you like daydreaming about the past and craving more for the future, and and then you don't feel well because you're not eating nutritiously. So, it's the same kind of thing. Think about the results of our actions and then modify our behavior accordingly, because we want ourselves to be happy. Okay, and so, liberation is a better state of happiness. Full awakening is even better than that. Okay, so those are the 4 points for that meditation. Then the next subsection is called Cultivating a Compassionate Intention. So developing a genuinely compassionate attitude is based on being aware of others' dukkha as well as their kindness. Now, when I said kindness, it meant that by being aware of others' kindness, we feel close to them. And it's that feeling of endearment or closeness that is very important to feel, in addition to an awareness of their dukkha, their suffering or unsatisfactory experiences. Okay? So the meditation on kindness leads us to feeling that others are dear. And it's that feeling of dearness that's important. Okay? To be aware of others' misery, we must first be aware of our own, and to be aware of our own in a healthy attitude, not one that beats our chest and goes, woe is me, everything is terrible, because that kind of attitude doesn't do any good, doesn't get us anywhere. Okay, so to be aware of others' misery, we must first be aware of our own, and to cultivate compassion that wishes ourselves and others to be free from dukkha, we must identify the causes of dukkha and know that they can be eradicated. Okay, so we have to be aware of our situation. That's the first truth. And then to know its causes. That's the second of the 4 truths. Okay. So, ignorance, a state of unknowing that misapprehends how phenomena exist, is the root cause of dukkha. So remember, dukkha means all the unsatisfactory experiences that we go through. Unknowing implies the existence of its opposite, a state of knowing or wisdom. This gives us confidence that it is possible to eliminate ignorance and overcome dukkha. In other words, if you eliminate the cause of something, then that result ceases also. Understanding this, we naturally want to learn the path to bring it about. Once again, we see the Buddhist teachings on the 4 truths of the Aryas, the framework of the Buddhist path. And that's what was just described. The first 2 of the 4 truths pertain to the cause and result of birth and cyclic existence, ignorance as the cause and suffering as the result. The last 2 truths pertain to the cause and effect of freedom from that dukkha, the path, which is the cause, and the attainment of nirvana, which is the effect. As discussed earlier, there are 3 levels of dukkha. So first is the dukkha of pain, which is the physical and mental pain that all beings abhor. Okay, so everybody, you don't need rocket science to know the dukkha of pain. Everybody can understand it, and nobody wants it. Okay? So being aware of that has nothing to do with spiritual practice. Yeah, we all know that. Okay, the dukkha of change refers to experiences and sensations that we usually identify as pleasurable. These are harder for ordinary people to identify as unsatisfactory, but when we think about them in greater depth, we see that they do not bring us lasting happiness, ultimate satisfaction, or security. In fact, they often leave us disillusioned or despondent. Okay, so what's an example of the dukkha of change?
Your ice cream.
My ice cream. Okay, actually, it's Venerable Tarpa's ice cream too. We're the mint chocolate chip crowd, aren't we? Okay, so it could be ice cream. I mean, everybody understands that. It could be a relationship. It could be a job. It could be praise. It could be a good reputation. Okay, it could be a yacht. It could be political power. It could be, a position in a company. It could be your parents finally approving of you. It could be lying on a beach in the Bahamas. Yeah, I mean, we all have different things. It could be the music that you like. It could be going out with friends. Okay. So all the things that ordinary people consider happiness. Yeah. Okay. But it doesn't give us lasting happiness, ultimate satisfaction, or security. Yeah. So, okay, it brings some level of worldly happiness, but it doesn't cure our problems. And sometimes it brings more problems. Yeah. So, you work really hard, you get what you want, then your friend gets something better. And at first you felt really proud of yourself. Oh, I worked so hard. I got this, whatever it was, maybe your flashy red sports car. And I got that. And then you look over and your friend got a more expensive, classier, bright red, sports car. And all of a sudden you feel like, oh, I did all that work and it still wasn't good enough. My friend has something better. More people will look at him and think he's successful. More people will think that he's really cool. Again, I'm left behind. I come in second. Yeah, true or not true? Yeah? Okay, so, yeah, it brought you some happiness, but it doesn't provide any kind of lasting security at all. Yeah, you have a relationship and somebody says, you are so wonderful, I've never met anybody like you. And you feel so good because you are special. You are the special one. So of course you love this person because you're their special one. I mean, who wants to be the special one of a creep? So you want to be the special one of somebody who's really wonderful. Yeah, so of course you see the other person as wonderful. Yeah, and they're more wonderful because they see that you're wonderful. Yeah, and it's just wonderful. And you have your picture taken, the perfect picture, and they put it in the New York Times in the wedding section, and everybody goes, oh, aren't they a lovely couple? Oh, this is so wonderful. And your family is happy that you finally settled down. And then what happens?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've all had relationships. What happens?
They get sick, they get grumpy.
What?
they get sick, they get grumpy, you argue, conditions change, they lose their job, and things get difficult.
Yeah. And they get old and they're not nearly as sexy then. Yeah? You're going to fall in love with some 90-year-old person? Come on. Of course, we always think that we're young and attractive. Yeah. Like my dad, you know the story of my dad who, after my mom died, looked up this woman that he dated before he met my mom. And she came to visit one day, and he said to me afterwards, "She's an old lady." He was so surprised. It's like, "Dad, you're an old man." But he didn't see himself that way at all. You know, he was still back, you know, kind of fantasizing, what if he had married her instead of my mom? Of course, I was quite happy he married my mom, otherwise I wouldn't be around. Okay. Then the deepest unsatisfactory condition is the pervasive dukkha of conditioning. The fact that our very existence is conditioned by ignorance and polluted karma. Okay, so we may have all sorts of nice circumstances in the immediate time, you know, in the moment, but the basic fact of our life is we're not free. Okay, and it isn't the president that makes us unfree. It's our own afflictions, it's our own karma that limit us. Okay, and they're not going to go away by having a popular vote or by, rigging, getting the electoral college out of the picture. You know, we have to eliminate those things from our mind ourselves. When the Buddha spoke about the disadvantages of dukkha, he was principally referring to this form of dukkha, the pervasive dukkha of conditioning. When we can recognize the nature of cyclic existence in such terms, we will be able to develop genuine aspiration to seek freedom from it. Cultivating the wisdom that counteracts ignorance is the path to freedom. This wisdom that knows reality must be cultivated by the subtlest level of consciousness, a state of mind that is beyond our everyday gross mental processes. So he's getting into Tantra here. Highest Yoga Tantra refers to 80 conceptions that are indicative of the gross level of mental processes. When these gross levels of mind gradually dissolve, we experience 3 increasingly subtler levels of consciousness, called the white appearance, the red increase, and black near attainment. When these 2 have dissolved, the innate mind of clear light dawns. It is at this subtlest level of consciousness that the wisdom that is the true antidote to our innate ignorance needs to be cultivated. Okay, so not just by the very gross or coarse levels of mind, like our sense consciousnesses, or even our gross mental consciousness. Yeah. Therefore, the demarcation between being fully awakened or imprisoned in cyclic existence is a function of this fundamental mind of clear light. If the fundamental innate mind of clear light remains obscured by the afflictions, we are in the state of cyclic existence. When the afflictions, as well as their seeds and latencies, have been removed from the fundamental mind of clear light, we attain liberation. And when the fundamental mind of clear light is freed from even the latencies of the afflictions, we attain Buddhahood. So we can see that liberation and awakening are actually functions or states of the fundamental innate mind of clear light. Okay? Do you see, what His Holiness is doing? He starts out with something, the dukkha of pain that we can all understand, and then within a few paragraphs, we're talking about the subtlest level of consciousness and how that needs to be activated and then used to realize the nature of reality. And he just weaves from one thing into the other, taking us along with him. Yeah, but really showing us that samsara and nirvana are mental states. They are not places. And they depend on the state of this fundamental innate mind of clear light. And the only thing that can change that and purify that is through our own practice, by realizing the nature of reality. There's no pill we can take. There's no petition to sign. It has to be done through our own internal mental practice. Okay? And that depends on learning how to do the practice from a proper teacher. Okay? Not from somebody who just placed an ad in the New Age newspaper with a special deal for you if you sign up right away. Okay, but from somebody who's really studied the Buddha's teachings, practiced them, and attained the results. At first, we understand samsara and awakening in terms of our own dukkha and our own minds, which inspires our renunciation of samsaric dukkha. Okay, because we're thinking about ourselves. We want ourselves to be happy. Okay, wanting ourselves to be happy, what do? We generate the mind that wants to be free of cyclic existence. We renounce the dukkha of cyclic existence. When we extend our perspective to see all other sentient beings in this light, compassion arises. So last weekend we were studying about the 3 kinds of compassion. No, we only did one kind. We didn't even get to the other 2. Okay, but, we begin to see how when you meditate on the bucket and the 6 analogies of the bucket, then you really see your own situation in samsara and the situation of all others as well. Although we are not always aware of it, we are closely connected to all these sentient beings who are in the same boat as we are. Since we have been reborn for infinite lifetimes, they have been our parents and raised us with kindness in previous lives. In this life, too, our ability to stay alive depends on them. Sentient beings grow our food, make our clothing, build our homes, treat our illnesses, and teach us everything we know. When we look deeply, we see that their kindness to us is limitless. Automatically, compassion and a sense of concern for their well-being arise within us. Okay? But we have to do this meditation to have that feeling of compassion and concern for their well-being arise. We can't just read it and say, oh yes, those poor sentient beings, I have compassion. We have to really contemplate it so that, it evokes a deep understanding in our hearts. Just as all of our experiences of mundane happiness, prosperity, security, friendship, or simply having enough to eat, come in relation to other sentient beings, the fruits of our spiritual practice also rely on other beings. So it's not just that our ability to stay alive in all of our samsaric rebirths depend on other sentient beings, but also our spiritual advancement depends on them. Okay, so all these creepy sentient beings who don't do what we want them to do, who accuse us of bossing them around when we're simply trying to help them. Yeah, you know all these uncooperative sentient beings? Yeah, not us. Well, of course, not you, but of course you think other people in the room are these uncooperative sentient beings, right? Yeah. So, okay. So our spiritual progress also depends on them. Okay. So trying to hide away and ignore and flee from people we find disturbing isn't really to our benefit. Okay. Protecting ourselves, yes. Okay. But having anxiety about the whole thing and, dividing the world into friends, enemies, and strangers, helping our friends, harming our enemies, none of that leads to anything good spiritually or on a worldly level. Remember last week when I was saying, it was at the retreat, and I said, imagine what it would be like if, in the Senate, Mitch took out the gavel, or in the House, Nancy took out the gavel and hit it and say, okay, we are gathered here today to work for all the benefit of all the citizens of this country, to make sure they have health and food and a place to eat and clothing, and that all their potential can be expanded and revealed through education and encouragement and so on and so forth. I had never thought of that in that way until I said that in the class. And that image has been stuck in my mind all week. It's like, can you imagine what that would be like? Yeah. I realized I had never even imagined that before. Yeah. But all it is a change of the mind. That's all. It's just, thought is incredibly powerful. And just a change of the mind, a change of the thought, completely changes everything. Yeah? Okay, so, that awareness that not only this life depends on sentient beings, but also, our whole spiritual practice and our gaining realizations, our awakening, depends on sentient beings. Because if we leave one sentient being out, then we don't have bodhicitta. If you don't have bodhicitta, enlightenment is impossible for you. Okay? So every little bug. I'm finding new bugs in my house that I didn't find last year. There's some kind of really big ant now. I don't know if you get them down here, but I'm getting several really big ants. Okay. And together with the spiders and the ticks and everything else that, prevent me from being lonely there. Okay. In this life, too, our ability, no, I just read that already. Okay. Cultivating compassion, practicing generosity, living in ethical conduct, and developing fortitude are all done in relation to other sentient beings. Okay, so the fruits of our spiritual practice rely on other beings. We can't practice generosity without somebody to give something to. We can't practice ethical conduct, which is the nature of non-harmfulness, without having somebody there to avoid harming. We can't practice fortitude, which is remaining, balanced when people get angry at us, if there's nobody angry at us. Okay, so our whole, I mean, to create merit, the collection of merit is completely dependent on other sentient beings. So that's why they say that bodhisattvas, when they hear somebody coming who says, give me something, the bodhisattvas go, oh, good. Yeah. There's certain people, I just got an email from somebody I haven't seen in a long time saying, are you there? Checking if it's my email address. My first thought was, what does this person want? They only write me when they want something from me. And this is not the proper thought, especially since this was the person who put the flyer in Bodhi Tree bookstore in 1976. It was 1975 that was the cause of me going to my first meditation course. Yeah. So to have that thought about this person, oh, they only call me when they want something. After that kindness that they showed me, completely, my attitude completely stupid, isn't it? When we cultivate single-pointed concentration or wisdom, our underlying motivation has to do with other sentient beings. Likewise, our attainment of Buddhahood depends on sentient beings. It can only occur when we truly dedicate ourselves to their welfare. Without sentient beings serving as the object of our compassion and care, there is no way for us to create the causes for supreme awakening. Therefore, we can see that when it comes to our own happiness, be it mundane or transcendental, the presence of other sentient beings is indispensable. Seeing this, Shantideva wonders, in engaging in the bodhisattva deeds, why we revere the Buddhas but not sentient beings. Shouldn't we try to forsake our self-preoccupation and cultivate a sense of endearment and compassion for them? So it's true, isn't it? We revere the Buddhas. That's no problem. Yeah, we want to build a temple. Yeah, people will be happy to donate into a Buddha hall. Okay, but if we say we want to build, a block of toilets for sentient beings, so that they have good sanitation, or we want to do something for the kids at Yes, yeah, or we need funds to mail the book that we're publishing to all the inmates. Yeah, people don't donate as readily for those things. It's like, yeah, well, why should I spend my money? Why should I donate for those people? But Shantideva says that, in terms of our gaining enlightenment, the sentient beings are just as important as the Buddhas, as objects with which we create merit. Yeah. So why do we cherish the Buddhas, but we don't like sentient beings? Huh? When I lived in Italy, the lamas stayed in this little villetta. And whenever a guest teacher came, it's like we all wanted to work in the villetta. I want to make tea for, Rinpoche or Geshe-la. I want to clean the room. I want to do this. I want to just be in the building and do anything to be close to this holy person. Yeah. So having people work in the villetta, no problem. Everybody wanted to do that. Okay? But they also need people to wash the dishes in the kitchen. And none of us wanted to do that. Yeah. Wash the lama's dishes in the villetta? Yes. Wash dirty dishes in the kitchen for sentient beings? No. As if there was a difference in dirty dishes, As if some dirty dishes were holy and some weren't. And we wanted to be near the holy, dirty dishes. And forget about sentient beings, Why should I wash their dishes? They have two hands. They can wash their own dishes. Why should I do it? But we would never say that about the Lama who was visiting. Yeah. Oh, he can wash his own dishes. No, get out of the way. I'm going to wash his dishes. Yeah. One line in the 7-point mind training of Geshe Chekawa, who lived 1101 to 1175, says that emptiness is the supreme protection. The idea is that when we are confronted with an obstacle, we should reflect upon the emptiness of the person who is harming, the act of harm, and ourselves as the recipient of the harm. By contemplating that none of these has any independent self-nature, but exists in dependence on the other two, we are able to counter the obstacle. Similarly, meditating on compassion towards the agent of harm is a strong method to cut the intensity of our sense of injury. Instead of harboring malice towards that person, cultivating a sense of concern, caring, and compassion for him is the most powerful kind of protection. So meditating either on emptiness or on compassion when something happens where someone's harming us. Do we remember to do that when somebody harms us?
Rarely.
Yeah, exactly. Rarely. Somebody harms us, what's the first thing? Attack back. If we don't attack back verbally, because we're trying to be nice, then our mind is going round in circles, with all of our syllogisms and consequences about how we are right and they are wrong. But it doesn't get us anywhere, does it? The tremendous benefits of altruism are evident in both our daily lives and our spiritual lives. When we cultivate an altruistic attitude towards colleagues, family members, or even people whose actions are repugnant to us, immediately fear, insecurity, and anxiety decrease. This occurs because underneath fear and insecurity is a suspicious attitude that looks at others as a threat. When we view others as being truly like ourselves, as living beings who naturally aspire for happiness and wish to overcome suffering, and on that basis develop concern for them, it has the immediate effect of releasing us from the grip of tension, mistrust, and jealousy. Here it is evident that right away altruism creates ease and joy within us. We can mentally relax, sleep more deeply, and the taste of our food even improves. In a sense, as a byproduct of cultivating an altruistic intention and engaging in altruistic action, our own interests are served. Everything from temporal happiness to the long-term joy of full awakening. All of that comes from benefiting sentient beings. So we should all be clamoring to go wash their dishes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Get out of the way. I want to create the merit of washing dishes. All of these are a function and result of altruism. If we think and act with compassion now, eventually as Buddhas, we will be able to benefit other sentient beings in the most effective way possible. Although the wisdom realizing emptiness is very important on the path, it is bodhicitta that makes this realization a cause for us to attain the fully awakened mind of a Buddha. Without great compassion and bodhicitta, the wisdom realizing emptiness alone cannot bring Buddhahood. It can bring liberation, but it can't bring Buddhahood. Okay, so another meditation, yeah, for you to do. So first, the altruistic intention of bodhicitta encompasses all sentient beings. Generating it uplifts our hearts and gives meaning to our lives. So that's something really to spend some time thinking about. Mm-hmm. And then 2, generating bodhicitta begins with wanting to free ourselves from the 3 kinds of dukkha, or unsatisfactory conditions: the dukkha of pain, the dukkha of change, and the pervasive dukkha of conditioning. 3, like us, other sentient beings are afflicted by the 3 types of dukkha. Like us, they want to be happy and avoid misery. In addition, they have been and will continue to be kind to us. So we are very close to them. Generate compassion, wishing them to be free from all dukkha. And then 4, based on this compassion, generate the altruistic intention to become fully awakened so that you can bring this about. Okay, now the section called Mind Training, or Lojong. So His Holiness says, one of the practices I cherish and enjoy the most is mind training. Many texts have been written on this, and I myself often teach them. Mind training presents techniques for transforming adverse circumstances into the path. From a Buddhist perspective, all the misfortune we experience can be traced back to our own destructive actions, or negative karma. Destructive actions which were motivated by our self-centered thought and self-grasping ignorance. The self-centered thought believes that our own happiness, including our own liberation, is more important than that of others. And the self-grasping ignorance misapprehends the actual way all people and phenomena exist. At the moment, our idea of success is that all external events unfold according to our wishes, and all people behave in accordance with our ideas. Okay, that's our definition of success and happiness, isn't it? We are happy when our desires and needs are fulfilled. But when we encounter adversity, we crumble and revert to old habits like complaining, sulking, or attacking those who interfere with our desires. Is that what you do? Yeah? Who complains more than sulks and attacks? Who's a specialist in complaining besides me? Okay. Who's a specialist in sulking? Who's a specialist in attacking? We kind of do all 3, don't we? Yes. Versatility, yes. We can multitask. However, if our happiness depends on the behavior of others, we have no recourse and little control when things do not go as we wish. Because we can't force other people to do what we want. But if our happiness is rooted in our own thoughts and actions, we have the means to determine the nature of our future experiences. So it's interesting because at this moment, the president is using tariffs as a way of trying to cajole other countries to do what he wants, so to get his way, then putting tariffs on other countries. But it's a strategy that's not going to work, because who's going to have to pay the extra amount for the tariffs? Us. Citizens. Yeah. So the U.S. citizens are going to have to pay more for everything we get because the president isn't putting, tariffs on, foreign goods. But no corporations are going to absorb that. They'll pass it all on to us. Yeah. And yet, he's thinking that that will cause them enough suffering, foreign countries, that then they'll do what we want. So by putting tariffs on Mexico, then the Mexico government will stop migrants from Central America from coming into the U.S. Yeah, we could make a good consequence from it. But that's the strategy. Is that going to work? Yeah? It's not. Okay. So thank goodness our happiness is not rooted in trying to get other people to do what we want. Otherwise, we'd be inflicting our own version of tariffs on other people and, still being quite miserable. Okay, but if our happiness is rooted in our own thoughts and actions, we have the means to determine the nature of our future experiences. Remembering this, we resolve to subdue self-centeredness and self-grasping ignorance and the actions that are motivated by them. In short, not only is it counterproductive and futile to blame others for our problems and unhappiness, it is also unrealistic. They are not the true cause of our misery. This should go on the mirrors in the bathroom, together with "good enough, dear." Okay? It is not only counterproductive and futile to blame others for our problems and unhappiness, it is also realistic. They are not the true cause of our misery. We just keep forgetting this, don't we? Every time something happens that we don't like, we've heard this gazillions of times, but we keep forgetting it. By accepting responsibility for our unrealistic expectations and our previous harmful actions, we can transform their undesirable results into factors that help us to progress on the path to awakening. We do not deliberately seek out suffering, but when it comes our way, we can benefit from it by practicing mind training. Okay, so we don't deliberately make ourselves suffering. We don't have to. The possibility, the opportunity to practice mind training just comes automatically. Yeah. One method to transform adversity into the path to awakening is to contemplate cause and effect by understanding that our difficult experience is the result of our own past destructive actions, which were motivated by afflictions. Oh, again, really? You mean this is why I'm experiencing this unpleasant situation again is because my own past karma? Can't something just for once be somebody else's fault? No. Yeah. In this meditative technique, we reflect that the karmic seeds created by those actions could have ripened as horrible suffering in an unfortunate rebirth. But now they are ripening as a suffering we can actually manage. Yeah? Because the sufferings we experience in this life, we can manage them. We don't like them, but, they're nothing like being born in a horrific rebirth for a long time. So, this brings a sense of relief. This is nothing compared to what it could have been. Then we understand that if we don't like this suffering, we must stop creating the causes for it. Duh. You mean, really? I have to start being nice to other people? You mean really? I can't take my frustration out on others and blame them for everything I don't like? We renew our determination to live ethically and abandon harmful actions because we know that harming others also brings suffering upon ourselves. The practice of transforming adversity into the path sees difficulties as opportunities to learn and grow. If someone criticizes ourselves unjustly, or if we experience a painful physical injury, we contemplate the benefits of problematic situations. What? The benefits of problematic situations? What? Adversity strengthens our renunciation because we see no lasting happiness is to be found in cyclic existence. Our conviction in the law of karma and its effects becomes stronger because we see that difficulties arise from the causes that we ourselves created. Our compassion increases because we can empathize with the suffering of others. So all these are benefits of inconvenience, suffering, unhappiness. Bodhisattvas even look forward to problems because they are focused on the benefit that can be accrued from experiencing them with a virtuous attitude. That this can happen illustrates dependent arising. When we introduce new ways of thinking, our resultant mental states change from unhappiness to appreciation. We are no longer constrained in our choice of emotional responses to constrained in our choice of emotional responses to difficult situations, to fear, anger, or self-pity. Okay, so we realize, wow, there's a whole bunch of different ways we can respond to difficulty. We don't have to do our same old, same old. The thing is, we have to remember this at the time. Okay? That's why putting it on the mirror in the bathroom is helpful. Yeah. The mind training practice instructs us on the development and implementation of the two bodhicittas. Conventional bodhicitta is the altruistic intention to attain awakening for the benefit of all beings. An ultimate bodhicitta is the wisdom directly realizing the ultimate nature that relies on the extraordinary method of conventional bodhicitta. So ultimate bodhicitta isn't just the wisdom realizing emptiness. It's the wisdom realizing emptiness that is supported by conventional bodhicitta. Practitioners of mind training generate compassion and conventional bodhicitta whether or not things are going well in their lives. They cultivate ultimate bodhicitta by meditating on emptiness. When doing so, in addition to using reason, they emphasize the practice of seeing all phenomena as like illusions, as a way to approach the correct view of emptiness and to deal effectively with adversities. When we see a difficult situation as illusory and remember it is only an appearance to the mind, not an inherently existent problem, then our mind is more relaxed. Okay, so when somebody is talking to you in a, what you perceive to be a really nasty, critical tone of voice and saying horrible things, if you think, this is simply an appearance to my mind, yeah, there's no inherently existent awful person with a horrible tone of voice. Okay? Because when we have faced problems, we believe in what appears to us. We believe that appearance exists as an objective entity. Yeah, and it doesn't. Okay, it exists dependent on many different factors, and one of the factors is, how we interpret it, how we look at it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's helpful if we just say, oh, this is just an appearance to the mind. I don't need to get wigged out about it. It's as if, I think sometimes, like, if all of a sudden Mickey Mouse appeared and started criticizing me. Okay, there's Mickey, telling me off. I would just kind of laugh. Yeah, oh, Mickey Mouse is telling me off. I wouldn't take it so seriously. But if it's, somebody I know who I want to think well of me, who I think is a real person, then I'm going to get bummed out. But if Mickey Mouse is doing it, I know Mickey Mouse isn't real. Yeah? You getting what I'm saying? Yeah, so there's an appearance of Mickey Mouse. Yeah, like when you go to Disneyland, and Mickey Mouse is there with big ears. But if that Mickey Mouse starts telling you off, you just, you kind of make it, you can make a game of it. But if we think, oh, this is a real person, real person, then it becomes all very serious. Okay? Of course, if somebody's this is a technique to keep us from getting angry, to protect us from anger. Okay? Mickey Mouse may still be saying things that are true, that are helpful for us to hear. Okay? So it's not that we say, oh, it's Mickey Mouse, I'm not going to, whatever he's saying is garbage. We say, it's just an appearance, I can play with it. But I can still listen to what Mickey's saying because there might be something true in it that applies to me. Okay? So in other words, to prevent anger from coming, we don't have to make the other person wrong. This is what we often do now, is if somebody criticizes us or saying something we don't like, we make them wrong. But sometimes they're saying things that it's good for us to listen to. But in order to listen, we have to overcome our resistance and our upset and our anger. Okay? It doesn't mean that what they're saying is true. We may look at what they're saying and still say, this is nonsense. But, by not being angry, at least then we can assess the situation, in a more balanced way. Recalling impermanence also eases the mind. When we remember that everything is in a state of constant flux, we see that even our painful feeling is changing in every moment and will not endure forever. Since we live in times when anger, wrong views, and violence abound, mind training techniques are especially valuable. Sometimes we have difficulties procuring material requisites for life: food, shelter, clothing, and medicine. Other times we are beset by abuse and insult from others. Due to political or economic situations, we may find ourselves impacted by conflict or corruption against our wishes. We may face prejudice and oppression, and in extreme situations, even war or genocide. Of course, if we can do something to avoid or escape horrible situations without harming others, we should definitely do it. But when we can't change our environment or the people in it, practicing mind training can lessen our misery and help us find inner strength we didn't know we had. If we don't practice mind training and instead remain stuck in our old views and emotional habits, these situations torment us. We may even be in danger of giving up Dharma altogether due to discouragement. Mind training enables us to turn all these situations around so that we can benefit from them. If we change our way of thinking to make it more in tune with reality, most of our mental unhappiness will be dispelled. That one should go on the bathroom mirror too. Yeah, the whole chapter. Then when you brush your teeth, yeah. If we change our way of thinking to make it more in tune with reality, most of our mental happiness will be dispelled. Fear comes from the self-centered attitude that fabricates 1,000 worst-case scenarios. Recognizing the scenarios are fictions of our own mind and are highly unlikely to happen alleviates stress. Even if those scenarios do occur, we will have inner strength to deal with them and know that resources also exist in the community to help us. Of course, if we take sensible precautions to avert harm or disaster, that is wise. But being crippled by unrealistic fears does not help us prepare for the future. Many Tibetans practiced mind training when they were imprisoned or tortured by the Communist Chinese after 1959. And for this reason, few of them suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. And that's something really remarkable. You know, when you meet some of these people and you hear these stories and what they've been through, you know, imprisoned or beaten or tortured or shocked by electrical cords, you know, because of their faith in the three jewels and because of their practice of mind training, they don't have the kind of PTSD that most other people would have. Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of His Holiness's doctors who was at the Menzikang, what was his name? I can't remember, but I remember reading an article that he wrote about his experience being imprisoned in Tibet by the Communist Chinese during the Cultural Revolution. And I mean, what he went through was horrible. I mean, just horrible. And yet there he was in Dharamsala, and you walk past him on the street, and you wouldn't know he was somebody who'd gone through all of this. You know, he smiled, he would, you know, he took all these patients at the medical, you know, the Menzikang, and treated them. And you wouldn't know that he had been through what he had been through. Yeah. And it's because he practiced. Cultivating the two bodhicittas through mind training was the chief practice I relied on when I became a refugee in 1959 at age 24. His Holiness saying that. And it is the practice I have relied on since to maintain a peaceful mind despite not being able to return to my homeland and seeing the suffering of my people, the destruction of our culture, and the denigration of Tibet's pristine environment. Mind training is very useful for dealing with psychological problems as well, for it gives us alternative perspectives on situations so that we can break out of the rusty mental and emotional patterns that perpetuate unhappiness. To understand these techniques properly, receiving teachings on them, and then applying these instructions to our own situation are important. Okay. And now there's another reflection. Okay. The first point. Since problems are inescapable in cyclic existence, transforming adversity into the path is a skillful and useful technique to make every situation we encounter an asset to our spiritual practice. 2, how do we learn from misfortune? We practice thinking that unpleasant situations result from our own destructive actions, and we make a strong determination not to perform those actions again in the future. 3, consider other benefits we can derive from accepting an unpleasant situation, increasing our determination to be free from samsara, enhancing compassion and bodhicitta, and developing the wisdom realizing reality.
This is from our friends in Singapore. And the question is from last week's lesson. They ask, what are the 3 different conditions to achieve the 3 capacities of Dharma practitioners?
Okay, so our 3 capacities, the initial capacity is to care more about future lives than the present life. The middle capacity is to want to attain liberation, and the highest capacity person is wanting to attain full awakening. Okay, so actually, you know what tells us the causes for generating these 3 capacities within us is the 3 principal aspects of the path by J. Tsongkhapa. Okay, it delineates those causes very, very clearly. So for example, to become a person of the initial capacity, to really do a lot of meditation on the law of karma and its effects, and also to meditate deeply on the disadvantages and drawbacks of samsara. And then that will but especially the cause and effect one. But it put, the disadvantage in there too. But that will enable us to, put our attention more on future lives than this one. And then to generate the renunciation that is necessary to have the aspiration for liberation. Then we think about the disadvantages of cyclic existence, and we learn its causes, all the afflictions and karma, and really see the disadvantages of being under their influence and control. And then to generate the wish for full awakening, then we think about the dukkha of others. We think about their kindness to develop a sense of endearment towards them. Yeah. And then from there, we develop that aspiration for full awakening. And then to enable that aspiration to bear the fruit of full awakening, then we learn the wisdom realizing emptiness.
I was thinking about your example of Mickey Mouse to help with illusion. And I was working in a law office once, and there was this guy, George, who I had to work with quite often. And I just hated going into his office to work on we had to cooperate. But the conversations would be quite difficult, at least from my perception. And I was doing Green Tara practice thanks to my teachers. And I went in there one day and I was just like complaining to myself, like, oh God, I have to talk with George and it's not going to go anywhere. And I went in and I said what I had to say. And to my mind, he started into his same old thing. And then all of a sudden I thought, well, what if this was Green Tara talking to me? I just leaned in and really listened to him. And I can't describe what happened. It was just like everything became pleasant. And we were laughing and talking, and all that stuff that was usually there, which I understand I was bringing in, was not there. So it was just like when you said, think of the person as Mickey Mouse. It could also be, well, Green Tara is trying to tell me something.
Right.
And just lean in and take it like that.
Right.
Yeah. So it was quite wonderful.
Yeah.
I don't remember to do that hardly ever.
But that's one of the other techniques that they say, is to see the other person as, a deity who's saying something to you. Yeah.
I heard today that a famous teacher said that abuse is such just a mental production, a mental appearance.
Oh, that abuse is a mental appearance.
Could you comment on that?
Could I comment on that? It depends, on your level of practice. I think for people who are highly realized, abuse is just a mental appearance. Yeah. For sentient beings who grasp it to a true existence, abuse appears very real. Okay? So it's not a case of whitewashing things, but it is a case of changing the perspective. And if you change the perspective, your emotional reaction to what happened can change too. Because as soon as we label something, for example, criticism, then whatever the other person says sounds harsh to us. Yeah, if we, label it something else, like you did with your friend George, then it appears in a very different way. Okay. Abuse is something that we tend to really grasp onto, because with ordinary minds, it's something very different difficult to change the perspective on that. Okay, it's difficult. It is possible, but it's difficult. Okay, so it really depends on the level of the practitioner. Seeing something as just an appearance and not abuse doesn't make it that from the viewpoint of the person who did the action. Because whether, you have two things here. For the side of the perpetrator, whether it's abuse, a lot of it depends on their motivation, their attitude. Okay? But from our side, as the experience of the action, how we respond to it depends on how we interpret it. Okay? So there's two things there. Yeah? You can be a bodhisattva and, somebody attacks you and your mind is just seeing, well, that's the ripening of my negative karma and I'm glad this is happening. You're a high-level bodhisattva, so you don't freak out when somebody's coming at you with a weapon or you don't react to the pain. Your mind is just, I'm purifying this negative karma, and you stay focused on that. Okay, so for that person, then it doesn't become abuse because their mind is in another state. From the person attacking them, that person could be creating the karma to go to the hell realm because they are intentionally wanting to inflict harm on somebody. Okay? So it's interesting how there's certain situations we can talk about as being able to transform our perspective, and we can accept that, and it sounds like a good technique. And then there's other situations where as soon as somebody says, we can transform our perspective, our mind goes, no, it is impossible. This is really what the situation is, absolutely objectively. So it's interesting to see, and we're ordinary beings, aren't we? We're ordinary beings. We're not going to be able to transform everything. Yeah. So we do what we can. Yeah. The important thing is, to protect our own mind. That's the important thing.
When anger hits, it is almost impossible to recognize at that particular moment to practice mind training. What is the stepwise method to overcome this?
Practice mind training on a daily basis before you're in those situations.
Okay, next question.
There's no shortcut other than that.
When we are overwhelmed with negative emotions, it is difficult to see emptiness, and it feels so real. So what should we do?
Practice emptiness before you're in those difficult emotions, and, learn to do that. Or, because emptiness is something difficult to understand, learn the mind training techniques for subduing the individual types of afflictions. Develop familiarity with them in your daily meditation so that when a situation comes up, you are familiar with that way of thinking and you can bring it to mind. Yeah. The point is, if you don't practice these mind training techniques in your daily practice repetitively, if you don't use these mind training techniques to look in the past at situations that are still sticky and grungy and ugly and make you upset, and if you don't in your meditation take these techniques and practice them on past things so that you can heal the past stuff, then it's like going for your driver's test without ever driving a car. You have to practice. Yeah. Otherwise, when the situation arises in the present, you're a goner because there's no familiarity with it.
Okay, and then the last question. I work with abused and traumatized children. Would Venerable be able to say something that could help my attitude in relation to the anger I experience on their behalf?
Mm-hmm. To think of the mind of the person who abused those children, what must that person's mind be like that they think that abusing a child will make them happy and alleviate their own pain? How much suffering must that person's mind be stuck in? How much unrealistic view must that person's mind be stuck in that they think doing that will alleviate their own pain? Yeah? And then you see, boy, this person is really confused. This person is really in pain. And then if you can have compassion for that person. Because wouldn't it be wonderful if they were free from suffering and its causes? Yeah? So that they didn't act like that? Okay. So mind training challenges us on a very deep level to change how we're looking at things. And at first, our mind can put up a lot of resistance, and we can misunderstand the whole technique as if it's saying, whitewash it. Yeah. It's not abuse. You just pretend, that it was some loving, caring. Yeah. So we're whitewashing it, and we're telling ourselves it's loving, caring, but we don't really believe that. Yeah. We're just whitewashing it, and inside we continue to have a lot of anger. Okay? So at that point, the technique is not working for you. And you need to think, okay, what other kind of thing will help me look at it so I can let go? Mm-hmm. And so maybe, thinking of all the other people who are suffering from that, and thinking, as long as I'm suffering, may my suffering, be enough, may it suffice for their suffering.
For me, one of the things, not the only one, but certainly one of the things that helped me sort of get over the anger of the abuse that happened to me was thinking that the person who did that was normalized to that behavior. So they were in a situation where that behavior was normal because it's what happened to them in more likely than not. And so there was no recognition in that person's mind that what was going on was anything other than what exactly what you do, what is normal. And so so that helped me a lot to be able to empathize, even though I understood that it was definitely not the right thing to do, but I could empathize with, okay, I can understand now how that could happen.
Yeah. That person had such experiences that misunderstanding that got ingrained in their mind without him realizing that it was a misunderstanding. Yeah.